Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a paper about some tech that could seriously change how we understand the brain. Like, imagine listening in on a conversation between individual neurons. That's what this is all about, and it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is like having a microscope, but for the brain, except we're not just looking, we can listen and even talk back using light, which is kind of the whole point here.
Okay, so this paper, it's from Nature Electronics. It's all about optogenetics, using light to control neurons. But this is different. This is about a new implantable probe that really takes it to a whole other level.
Totally. This probe has over 1,000, get this, tiny OLEDs, like the thing that lights up your phone, all on a single device, and each one can be controlled individually to target specific neurons super precisely.
So no more flooding the whole brain with light. We're talking about pinpointing individual neurons deep in the brain and just turning them on or off with light, like a light switch.
Exactly. Previous methods of optogenetic simulation.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as precise, especially deeper in the brain. This new probe, we're talking surgical precision.
And this is huge, right? I mean, the paper describes how they tested this in mice. They were able to actually trigger activity in specific neurons. It's like a tiny flashlight, but for brain cells.
And the precision goes beyond just location, too. These OLEDs can switch on or off insanely fast. We're talking nanoseconds.
Wow, that's like incredibly fast. Why is that speed so important?
Well, because that's how fast neurons actually communicate with each other. This level of control means we can look at the timing of all this neural activity with way more accuracy than before. We can start to see how the brain is processing information in real time.
So it's not just about where in the brain we're looking at, it's when things are happening and how those signals are moving between neurons.
Exactly. Oh, and it gets cooler. The researchers, they use 2 different colors of OLEDs on this thing, blue and orange.
2 colors. Okay, is this just to make it look fancy?
Not quite. It's about those opsins, those light-sensitive proteins. They respond to different wavelengths, different colors. So with 2 colors, you can control different types of neurons at the same time. Adds a whole new dimension.
So like 2 flashlights, each tuned to a different channel so researchers can talk to different neuron groups totally independently. I'm starting to get why this is such a big deal. But also, it's not just about single neurons either, right? They were activating neurons over a millimeter away from the probe.
That's right. And that might not sound like much, but in the brain, that's a huge distance. So we're not just limited to single neurons. We could influence activity on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Like, imagine being able to modulate brain rhythms or target whole circuits.
Okay, so we've got this probe. It can target individual neurons, activate them super fast, use different colors of light to talk to different neuron types. This is starting to sound like science fiction.
It really does. And it's not even the coolest part. There's another aspect to this probe we haven't even touched on yet.
Okay, I'm hooked. What else can this thing do?
So remember how we can control neurons with light? Well, they also built in over 1,000 single-photon avalanche diodes, or SPADs, into this probe.
SPADs. Okay, that's like ringing a bell. Super sensitive light detectors, right. They use those in some crazy high-tech cameras, don't they?
Yeah, they're so sensitive. Can pick up the faintest little photons. You're right, they're using them everywhere. Self-driving cars, medical imaging, anything that needs to really see light with crazy accuracy.
So where do these things fit in with this whole brain probe thing?
This is where it gets really cool. So we've got the OLEDs for stimulation, but now with the SPADs, we can also record brain activity, like at the single neuron level. It's two-way communication with the brain now.
Whoa, hold on. 2-way. We're not just sending signals in. We can listen to the brain talking back, live.
Exactly. These SPDs, they pick up the light that neurons emit when they're active. So now you can see how neurons react to being stimulated. It's like a window into how these neural circuits work for real, in real time.
That's insane. It's like we're not just observing anymore. We're having a conversation with the brain. Like before this, it was like shouting across a room. Now we can actually hear each other whisper. We can listen in on what each neuron is saying.
I like that analogy. And that's really what this is all about, unlocking those mysteries. Like now we can track how information moves through a circuit, see how these neurons work together, how we form memories, all that stuff.
This is seriously next level. It's like we're seeing a new era of neuroscience happening right before our eyes. But something this powerful, I mean, there's got to be questions about how it gets used, right?
For sure. I mean, the paper, it's mostly focused on how the tech works. But even the researchers are saying, look, this level of control over the brain, that brings up some ethical stuff to think about.
Yeah, it's like, We invented a new language, but we don't know the rules of engagement yet. What are the conversations we need to be having about something like this? What kind of concerns should people have?
Well, for one, this could be huge for treating diseases, right? Like neurological disorders. But we've got to make sure it's used responsibly. It's got to be available to everyone, not just a select few.
Right, right. Equal access to a technology this big, especially when it's brain health we're talking about, that's essential. What else?
And misuse, that's a big one, right? This kind of power, we've got to be careful. We need rules, ethical guidelines, make sure it's used for good.
It's like we're at a fork in the road. This incredible technology, it could change everything about how we understand and treat the brain. But we can't just race ahead. We've got to make sure we're asking the right questions.
Absolutely, it's got to be an open conversation, not just scientists, but everybody. Ethicists, policymakers, the public. This tech, it's going to impact everyone, so everyone needs a say in how it gets used.
It's a lot. This is big stuff. Our listeners probably wondering, okay, when can I expect to see this at the doctor's office? Are we talking months, years, decades?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, this research, it's super promising, don't get me wrong, but this is still early days, you know? Right now, it's mostly a research tool. Gives scientists a new way to look at the brain, but...
So no one's getting this implanted to treat, like, Parkinson's or anything next year?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot more work before this is ready for actual patients. Safety testing, figuring out how to actually make enough of these things, making it affordable. It's a whole process.
Okay, but still, even if it's a while, the potential here is huge.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine what we could learn about how memory works, learning, even consciousness. This could change, I mean, really change how we understand what the brain even is, what makes us human.
It's like we're on the verge of cracking the code. This probe, it's a game changer, but it also feels like it's part of this, I don't know, a bigger shift that's happening in neuroscience.
You're right. Like biology, engineering, computer science, it's all coming together. And we're getting these crazy advancements in how we study and even interact with the brain.
Yeah, it's a whole new world of brain exploration. And this probe with its, what is it, stimulation and recording at the level of a single cell, that's a big deal.
It's like going from a magnifying glass to, I don't know, the world's most powerful microscope. We can see and do things with the brain that were impossible just a few years ago.
Okay, so to wrap this up for our listener, this OLED probe, pretty incredible stuff. Amazing what we can do with engineering these days, right? Opens up all these new paths for brain research. We could be looking at a revolution here in how we understand the brain, and maybe even treat diseases down the road.
But, and this is important, we have this technology now, and we have to use it responsibly. We need to talk about this openly and honestly, what it means, how it should be used, make sure it's a good thing, you know.
It's true. Amazing tech is great, but we can't forget about the bigger picture. Thanks for diving into this with us. It's been fascinating. This probe, this is just the beginning. Who knows what we'll discover about the brain in the years to come?